Hey folks, here we are, May 21st of 2004, which means it's time for another edition of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong Rainbow Edition for 2024. Hello. Good afternoon from here in Calgary. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Dog's a little wound up, coming in and out here. Oh, he's apparently going to lay there chewing. We might have to deal with that. Anyways, I digress. It is week 20. I had it down earlier. It is week 20 of our Rainbow Edition for the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. I am so excited to be here with you. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are joining us. I am your host, Cheryl Arkison. Hello to all of you joining. I am excited. I am just returning, not just, we got home last night, but we had a 5-day weekend away. It was a long weekend here in Canada, May 2-4, as we tend to call it. And we took an extra long weekend and traveled to the next province over, Saskatoon, or Saskatchewan. We went to Saskatoon, which is one of the cities there. It's a pretty little city, much smaller than Calgary. Gorgeous river valley along the South Saskatchewan River. Everything was in bloom, and it was green, and it was feeling lush and glorious. The weather was kind of iffy, but it was fantastic. We did, however, spend most of it in a field house because my daughter was fencing. She was there for nationals. She did okay, not too bad. Sorry, dog was making a weird noise. She did not too bad, especially because she is a pentathlete. So fencing is one of the sports. So she doesn't train at fencing like all these other athletes are training at fencing, but she did pretty well considering that. And I think she's mostly happy with it. She can correct me. She was in full teenager mode this weekend, so we didn't have a lot of chats with her, let's just say. But we're home now. My hockey team won last night, so they're on to the next round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I'm sewing with my machine after 5 days away. So that feels great. That feels very great. I am ready for this block today. So let's get right into it. That was enough chit chat from me. I have kind of started this week's block by making a large strip set. Is this more than we need for today? Of course it is. It is way more than we need for today. But I am going to design a whole bunch. I've already designed. I'm going to introduce over the next, rest of the year, more blocks that will use this strip set. So you can go ahead and just use scraps or what you have laying around, or just want to cut and trim and make the strip sets for today. Totally fine to do that. I just went ahead and went width of fabric, right? So 40 to 42 inches, depending on your fabric, made an entire strip set of my fabrics. I did not measure my pieces, but I did use a ruler, just because when you're making them this long, it is nice to have the straight edges on there, but they're all just slight variations. What you want to do is, knowing what your typical width of your block is, so in my case 10.5 inches for these pastel ones, divide that into 6. Make sure you got some seam allowances included, and then give some wiggle room. Maybe some be a little bit less, some be a little bit more. I actually went and didn't do the math. I was just like, yeah, whatever, 2 inches is fine. 2 inches-ish is fine. Nope, I was a little bit short, so I ended up making another. I just did a bigger piece on the end, the purple. That's fine. They don't have to be the same. None of mine are exactly the same. They're just slight variations, sort of between 2 and 2.5 inches. I actually think variations will look more interesting. I could have, because this one was short, cut out a couple and did it, but I was running out of time as I was prepping for this live. So one purple strip that's bigger than everything else, that's the way we're going. So I just went ahead and made an entire strip set just to show you. I have pressed them all in the same direction, whichever direction you want, doesn't really matter. If you prefer to press open, go for it. It's kind of maker's choice is what we'll do. So I have this giant strip set. What are we going to do with it? Oh, I could just cut a block out of it, square it up, done, and then use the strip set for other ones. And maybe there'll be some other point in here where we need a simple block like that. And that's what we do. But we already kind of have one sort of like that. Week number 2, you can see right there. We made it a little bit differently and they're kind of more wedge shaped, but it's pretty similar. So I want to have some variations with all of this. So what I recommend, if you've got the fabric, go ahead, make a with the fabric strip set a little bit wider than what you're going to square things up to. And that gives you some wiggle room. You don't want a giant because you don't want to end up cutting off all of one color. So a little bit wider on the ends, even if all you do is make the 2 outside pieces a little bit bigger. So you have that wiggle room in there. So let's take the camera over here to cutting table so you can see next steps. I hope you've all had some lovely times. There's our lovely ladies. Let's say hello to them. Always standing over me, sitting over me, keeping a watchful eye on what we do. Okay, so I have my strip set. I'm going to grab, in this case, a square ruler, just because then I can keep an eye on sizes, right? So 10.5, I have like about an 11-inch strip here, which is great. That gives me a little bit of wiggle room. I'm going to go ahead and cut out more or less a square. I need to flip this around because I don't really need to flip around, just grab the other end. I would have been cutting in the wrong direction and I didn't want to do that. And there. I've just realized something as I'm standing here and I'm looking at this fabric here. My husband had this sweater that he loved, wore it all the time. And then over the winter, he's like, I can't find my rainbow sweater. And he kept calling it the rainbow sweater. I can't find my rainbow sweater. I can't find my rainbow sweater. I'm like, I have no idea where it is. Like, you must have put it somewhere, you know, who knows, blah, blah, blah. So we go through this whole conversation. And then I had a friend who was looking for a backpacking backpack. And so I was looking like to borrow it. So I was looking to see how big ours were. And lo and behold, I found his rainbow sweater in the bottom of one of the backpacks. It had been there since a hike in the fall. So, but I just realized his rainbow sweater is pastel. Like, it's these colors. That's hysterical. Anyway, so I'm cutting a rough square out of my strip set, right? Just want to give it a straight line. I'm not too worried about it being a perfect square there. And then I'm going to go ahead. Now, I could cut another square to make this block, but I don't want to leave that extra triangle. Actually, you know what? Thinking on the fly, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to cut a square about the same size because we can still keep it. Now this, keep that because that's going to be used for 1, 2, maybe 3 other blocks. Plus there's going to be some leftovers from today that we will end up putting aside. So you want to keep that with your fabric because here and there, can't say when, but here and there we will be using this strip set again. So as I said before, you could make these strip sets individually. They don't have to match. In fact, I think it's going to be a little more interesting if they don't match, but mine match in here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to effectively create a half square triangle with our 2 squares in there. So Oh, Louise, my goodness. So for those of you who can't read the comments, Louise is on here saying that she's had 2 strokes in the last 4 days. And she made a very nice compliment about me being her emotional lifeline. Let's not go too far. But I hope you are feeling okay. I hope you are getting great medical care. That's really, really scary. My friend's dad, or friend's mom, I should say, has just gone through the exact same thing. Unfortunately, in her case, she didn't realize it, and she lives alone. And so she went 3 weeks without medical care on it, and it's left some very lasting consequences to that. So I hope you're getting good medical care, Louise. I'm sending you a big, giant hug, and I hope that this little bit of creative break is doing you some good. So everybody send some love to Louise. We will be thinking of you. Okay, let's get back to the block. Take care, Louise. I want to make like kind of a half square triangle. We have a couple of ways that we can do this. You know, we could go the standard, you know, line them up, do the line across, sew on either side of the line, but that would make 2 blocks. We don't want 2 blocks, right? So I can put them here and just kind of draw a line. I'd get a longer ruler, but draw a line and then have my half square triangle. But how I place the fabric is going to, and then just trim off, and whatever is from behind gets put with those leftover strip sets. We'll probably use them somewhere else. But I have freedom in how I put these. So you can see that if I put my 2 fabrics, I'm just overlapping them here so you can see it. I've put them perpendicular so that I have horizontal and then vertical. Once I turn that into a half square triangle, they're actually the same direction, which is in and of itself an interesting kind of look. But today, that's not the one I'm going to. So what you need to do is actually put them parallel, running the same way. Do you need to line up all of your seams? Nope. You could if you really, really wanted to. I don't. Because see, then I'm going to get that kind of effect, right? Where I get this. Except if I just wanted this, I would just sew with a straight line, right? I would just make a quarter log cabin if this is the effect I want. So I actually want to go ahead and flip this, right? If you made these individually, you could play with the order of your rainbow so you get a little bit more interest going on there, right? I like that, where I'm going to have a lot more interest in what's going on here. So as I said, there's kind of 2 ways to approach making this block. I can have these lined up and draw a line and then sew on that line, trimming the what's in the seam allowance and setting it aside. The other thing that I can do is I could take just this one piece and cut, you know, a triangle right out of it and then do that stitch and flip sort of idea on here, right? I would have my triangle and I would stitch and flip. Both achieve the same result, okay? You have choices in how you do that. So I think I've figured out that I want it to go that way. I am just gonna double check, you know, in different directions. It's kind of the same effect, but the lines might be a little bit different. So, you know, you can play with it. But I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to go the route of drawing a line. Do you absolutely have to draw a line? No, you don't. But what drawing a line does is it just gives you something to follow. Now you can use a pencil that you have handy, a marking pen. I don't have marking pens because I don't use them. I'm just going to use a hair marker, right? So this is like a bone folder or a hair marker. You can just lay the ruler out and then draw your line by pressing down with the point of this. This is actually how I mark a lot of quilts when I'm doing them, because it just sort of marks a pressing line. You can even see it, it's showing up on the camera. Right, and then I can just sew down that, and I don't have to worry about any pens or pencils or marking pens doing something weird for me. So I'm going to go ahead and I am just going to sew. Oh, didn't want to get started. Right on that line. Now I am not worried about whether I am lining up my stripes of different colors between the two squares. I want that, for lack of a better term, jaggedness that's going to come, because I think it'll be more interesting. That's going to create some really fun movement in the block from there. Okay, so now that I have both sides, or it's sewn down the middle, I can make a choice. Do I want that to be the block? Or do I want that to be the block? It's kind of a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other scenario. They look pretty similar. It's just about where the lines are. And I think I'm going to go with this one because it's a little more jagged. There's less lining up that's happening compared to when I look at it this way. Well, I guess it's pretty close. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But before I go ahead and cut what's behind my seam allowance, I am going to just double check. It's not pressed, but I want to give myself an idea. Yes, I will have enough for the block once I square it up. So always worthwhile to give it a double check in case you need to make some shifts. And if when you double check and sewing on that line hasn't been good for size, there's a really easy fix for that. What you're going to do is you're going to undo the seam, right? You're going to undo this seam that you sewed, and then you're going to go with that stitch and flip technique, because you know that your squares are starting out big enough. So then you can just cut a triangle off of one of the blocks that you cut, and then stitch and flip it, and it will work that way. So it's a really easy fix if it's not there for you, but I'm okay. I double checked. Now I'm going to go ahead and line this up on my seam allowance. So I'm going to get, here's how you get a nice perfect seam allowance, is you put the ruler on there and you just trim away the excess. Keep these. We will use them again, okay? They are not to be trifled with, as they say. So put them with your remainder of your strip sets. Just handle them carefully. So here's a little trick. I just did it without thinking, and then I didn't show you. So we have triangles, right? That means we have all this bias here. When I'm going to put them aside, a lot of us, our instinct would be to just put them like this, because then they're going to lay flat. We don't have to worry about it. However, if this pile gets picked up and moved and a corner gets caught or grabbed or something like that, I might stretch it out. So what I often will do if I have to store triangles is turn them into a square like this, where I've folded up the corners. So it kind of creates a little packet, and then it means that it's sitting in this little packet like that, so that there's less chance of those corners kind of getting pulled and stretching the whole thing out. Okay, so all we have to do now is press this. It's not a big deal. I'm going to say hello to my daughter, who I just saw join the live. Child, aren't you supposed to be in class? No phones in class, kiddo. Anyways. So pressing is pretty straightforward. I just pressed it flat. You don't need to see me pressing it. It's not that exciting. I just pressed it flat, and then I'm pressing to one side. By all means, press open if you prefer. Just a habit. I don't think it'll make a difference to press to one side here at all. The block is still going to lay nicely for us. And there we have it. Just a fun kind of energetic rainbow for this week. I needed the energy. Now, when it comes to squaring up, you have some choices. Depending on how big your block is, you can choose to avoid this line as a 45-degree angle and kind of make it a little bit wibbly wobbly, which I could absolutely do. I would have some wiggle room to do that. Not a lot, but some, right? So I don't know if you can see. Let's get closer. I do have that 45-degree line on my ruler, and it's just going a little bit off. For me, when something's just a little bit off, I'd rather it be on. I want it to be way off or on, if that makes sense. Because a little bit off looks like you didn't sew it carefully, as opposed to way off, which is going to look very intentional. So I'm going to use that 45-degree line on the ruler, put it right on my seam. Make sure I have the right sizes. I'll have 10.5 inches on all sides. I'm going to hold my ruler carefully, and then I'm going to go ahead and trim those two sides. Remember, I'm right-handed, so I'm going up the right side and then right to left and over. Lefties, you will line it up over here, go up the left and then over. So you can see how if you have different widths of strips, that you can get some really kind of interesting designs here. I don't know what I'm going to call this one yet. Maybe a jagged HST. I don't know. We'll figure something out when it comes time to put it on YouTube. But there we go. There is our block. Look, and the sun came out a little bit to brighten the space for us. So there's our block for today. Honestly, the most time-consuming part of this block is definitely going to be making the strip set. It just, because long straight seams, they take a little bit of time. Not hard, just time in doing it. But otherwise, we have that. So let's say goodbye to the ladies for the day. See you later. We'll see you next week. Well, I'll see them later today. And let's put this block up with the rest of them. Right? And of course, how you place it in the quilt, you can play around. I really kind of like how that got that diagonal there, and then this one coming the other way. Right? But I could do something like that. Right? And then they're the same. That kind of changes it. I could go like that, which I think is how I'm going to do it, because I still got that diagonal line sort of doing something interesting. It's in contrast to this diagonal line, but it's not that purple on purple, which I had there. I'm getting this stripe on that. So that's the way we're going to go with it. Yeah. Excuse me. I didn't even have time. Didn't have time to say pardon me, I'm about to sneeze. Yeah, so that's where we're at. I'll have to make my strip set and my block for this. I actually have to make last week's block still in my monochromatic version. I haven't done that yet. And I think one of my little bits here will be a mustardy yellow, so that I can add that bit into this strip set here, and then make, of course, today's block in all of this. Hey, Elmer. How are you? I'm going to try something. I could regret this, but it's been a while. Remember when I first got him and I picked him up? He's really heavy now. Say hi, Elmer. He does not like this. There you go, bud. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. He had a great weekend while we were away because we ended up, our oldest stayed home because she had to work. And one of the other teammates, family, they needed someone to watch their dog. So their dog came over here. So my almost 18-year-old was like in heaven because she was home alone and had 2 dogs. So that's like dream world for her. He had another dog that was full of energy and he got to play with. And everybody got to go see their kid's fence that wanted to see him. So win-win all around. And winning for another block in our Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. 2024 is the Rainbow Edition, in case you couldn't tell. I'm really enjoying seeing everybody else's blocks. Please remember to, if you post them on Instagram, to share with everybody else through the hashtags. So Quilters Playcation, Quilters Playcation Adventure, or sorry, Quilters Playcation, QP Adventure Sewalong, or QP Adventure Sewalong 2024. Feel free to tag me in your photos. If you post stories, let me know, because I want to share them and show the world. I haven't done a big catch up on things. So if you're sewing this week, let us know. If you're recovering like Louise, please rest well. And we hope to see you here next week as well. So I am your host, Cheryl Arkison. You can find me every week here on Instagram at 2 p.m. Mountain for these live videos. I also post them on YouTube later. If you know someone who isn't on social media but has access to YouTube, because most people do, they can see the videos there as well. I try to post them by the end of the week, if not sooner. I don't think I posted last week's videos, so I might just do them both right away, and then they're done. So that's going to be it. We will see you next week for the finale of this row. Oops, sorry, dog. It's down here at my feet. You can see we only got one more block left. I don't know what I'm going to do, but we'll figure it out. It'll be something good to finish off this row for week 21 of this Adventure Sewalong. Thank you, everybody. It was lovely to have you here today. I hope to see you all again next week and in between. Take care.